Caribbean is bracing itself. We're talking wind, rain, and destruction. Hurricane Irma is the Atlantic Ocean's strongest storm in more than a decade, and it's hammering islands across the Caribbean. Those in the storm's path are preparing for the worst, boarding up windows and hunkering down, or even evacuating altogether. I'm Zain Asher, in for Amra and Michael, and this is CNN Today. All right, let's get you up to speed on this monster storm, Hurricane Irma. Everything is blown out, everything is gone. Those words from a man on the British Virgin Islands where Hurricane Irma has unleashed her monstrous power. Take a listen. These absolutely frightening pictures came from the Caribbean island of St. Martin, where Irma blasted ashore with sustained winds of 300 kilometers per hour. We're now hearing at least 2 people are dead and 2 others severely injured on St. Martin and St. Bart's as well. And this is just some of the damage on St. Martin. Take a look at this. Smashed buildings, wrecked cars there underwater, boats damaged there. Twisted palm trees as well. And from the nearby island of Barbuda, which actually took a direct hit, there has been no communication at all for the past 8 hours from that island. Listen to this man as he watches the eye approach on the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Looking out at the Frenchman's Cove in the Marriott Hotel, we're almost on the eye of the storm. The whole house is vibrating, the glass is shaking. Fingers crossed.
Based on that man's experience, based on his words there, I think it's safe to say that Irma is really a massive storm, as you can see in the startling view from the International Space Station. Almost a perfect swirling circle with a sharp spinning center as well. This is a Category 5 hurricane, the most powerful one to ever rage over the Leeward Islands, as you can see in this live weather radar. Irma is pushing northwest towards Florida, with the center right now beginning to pass just north of Puerto Rico. CNN has reporters throughout the region. We've got this story covered for you from Florida to Cuba to Puerto Rico, and that is where we find CNN anchor George Howell, who joins us live now from San Juan. So, George, I'm looking out the window behind you, and you can really see that this island is really getting lashed by this storm. The eye hasn't quite hit yet, but just walk us through what people are experiencing. Set the scene for us there.
Zain, the conditions here getting worse and worse and worse by the hour. So if I look over, it's because I'm making sure that the coast is clear, because debris is flying, keeping in mind that wind gusts right now right around 135 kilometers per hour. So intense wind gusts, and as you pointed out, the closer you get to the eye wall of the storm, Zain, around 300 kilometers per hour. So very intense winds. We also understand that that eye of the storm, it will be much closer. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure I know what's happening. Much closer to Puerto Rico than initially expected. So again, this storm bearing down come 8 p.m. Eastern time, Zain. That is when things are expected to get even worse. Let's talk about the situation on the island as it stands now. There was a mandatory evacuation, that meaning people in their homes, etc. They've been urged to go to safer shelter, to higher ground to ride this storm out. We're in a place that we are safe enough to show you what's happening, but we're doing this so that people around the world, people in the parts that are yet to be affected by this storm, we're doing this so you can see what's happening. You can know what's to come. You can take the right preparations. Find safe shelter. That's the word, because again, we're talking about a Category 5 hurricane. As you pointed out again, nothing like this has been recorded in the Atlantic, and we're feeling the effects here in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Again, storm shelters here on this island, some 500 have been opened. And as we get closer to the nighttime hour, this beast out there gets stronger and closer, Zain.
Yeah, I can really tell that the wind is really hitting your eyes. So I really appreciate you being with us for this, George, and weathering the storm there in San Juan. But just give us more detail on how people have been preparing in the lead up to today.
Sure, and you saw the preparation throughout the island. people, boarding up their windows and doors, people making a run on food, water, etc., gas for their vehicles. And also just paying very close attention, Zane, to the emergency alerts, people heeding the warning and going to those emergency shelters. It's also important to point out the backdrop of Puerto Rico, a very significant bit of context here, because this is an island that has been dealing with a great deal of debt, a debt crisis of $70 billion. We understand that this island will receive federal assistance from the U.S. government, disaster relief, but the question many officials, even locals here, ask, what does recovery look like? How long would that take on this island? They're already concerned. They're already concerned about the electrical grid. So how bad is the damage? How long does it take? Those are all the questions that we'll see here in Puerto Rico. But again, that's what's coming.
George. Yeah, George, thank you so much. Stay safe, and thank you for bringing us that report, okay? Appreciate that. Okay, and as Hurricane Irma takes aim at its next targets, we are getting some dramatic images of the damage in the Caribbean from the storm's whipping winds and pounding rain as well. Linda Kincaid has that part of the story.
Barreling in with winds of up to 300 kilometers an hour, Hurricane Irma slammed into the Caribbean. The monster storm leaving a path of destruction in St. Martin and tearing off rooftops in St. Thomas. The Category 5 hurricane caused mass flooding in Antigua, turning roads into rivers, knocking out electricity.
We have lost all communications from that island. So we are not sure as to exactly what is happening, but we have been told overnight that the damage over there has been extensive.
Whipping up seas as it roared past the British Virgin Islands, the tiny island of St. Bart's didn't stand a chance. These American tourists hit as one of the most powerful Atlantic Ocean hurricanes in recorded history hit Guadalupe.
There are houses torn apart, trees snapped in half, cars with bricks just smashing them in.
Our front door is bending a little bit, so we need to make our way to the bathroom.
Rachel and Loren fear the worst is not over.
We're mostly, at least for myself personally, mostly concerned about what's to come afterwards. From what we saw when we went out during the eye.
Linda Kincaid, CNN.
Okay, let's talk more about the hurricane's path. Projections show that Hurricane Irma could actually hit Cuba by Friday, possibly before making that northwardly turn towards Florida. The island nation is actually known for efficient storm preparations. Let's bring in CNN's Patrick Ottman, who's live for us in Havana. So Patrick, Cuba is really known for this sort of military-style preparedness when it comes to hurricane. Just walk us through how they've been dealing, how they've been preparing for Hurricane Irma.
Absolutely, and unlike many countries in the Caribbean, you have a very strong, omnipresent, even central government here, and they take this very seriously. Cubans know from generations of storms, damage that a major hurricane like Irma can wreak on an island. You can't escape a storm when you're on an island many times, so people do take it seriously. They're really adopting a wait-and-see attitude, getting everything ready and preparing for the worst-case scenario. With every forecast, it seems to change. Just this morning, it seemed like Cuba was in for a major devastation, that there was going to be a direct strike on the island. Now, it seems like it could be more of a glancing blow, which still could be very, very significant when you're talking about a storm of this size, but perhaps not as terrible as we once thought. But of course, until the storm passes, we're not in the clear. And many people here are concerned because they live in buildings that could fall down. The infrastructure here is very dilapidated. So while the government does a very good job of evacuating people, keeping them safe, keeping them informed, this is a poor country, Zane, and a lot of the houses that people live in, a lot of the structures, a lot of the roads would not survive this kind of storm.
And ironically, it actually looks pretty beautiful in terms of the weather where you are right now. But of course, in the next 2 days, that could possibly indeed change. All right, Patrick Ottman, live for us there in Havana. Thank you so much. Let's get the latest predictions now on Hurricane Irma's path as it barrels towards the U.S. mainland. Tom Seda is tracking all of this for us. He joins us live now. So Tom, I was listening to you earlier and you were just talking about the real sort of remarkable staying power of this storm. Just walk us through what exactly has been pounded already in terms of which areas have been hit and what is immediately next.
Well, we've never had a hurricane this strong in the history of the Atlantic smash into the Leeward Islands. There was one hurricane of all of the Atlantic, which was stronger. That was Allen in 1980, but this one has now surpassed Allen, not in the speed of the winds, but in the duration of the strength. Allen did not nearly have the staying power, and so this is what we're finding out. We're going to move through this quickly and show you some satellite images. Now, again, the eye made its way right over Barbuda. That's the island. It was in the overnight hours. And then it made its way early morning, and when the sun was rising, although you wouldn't know it with the winds and the rain, in St. Martin and Anguilla. We have no communication with these islands, most likely no power, widespread destruction. Until the back edge of the system exits this region, they will not be able to get aircraft up in the air to give us any sort of photos or damage assessment. Ground crews most likely are scrambling to try to assess what they can from civil emergency management agencies, and we'll pass that along to you when we know it. This is moving quickly. In fact, we're watching the storm move much faster than Hurricane Harvey did. With Harvey, you could outrun it. But I want to show you some of the wind gusts, and this is in miles per hour, just so you know. We had gusts up to 131, 154, 155, and then the instrumentation broke. That was on the island of Barbuda, so that gives you an idea of just how massive this is. We are watching the storm system not make landfall in Puerto Rico, but it's pretty close to the land, and we're getting a good maybe 2.5 meter storm surge. We are going to find those hurricane force winds slide across the entire island nation, which is occurring now. The threat for landslides definitely occurs. But this is going to continue for a while because it does have a pretty good clip in its movement that should keep rainfall totals slightly lower. But some of the northern British Virgin Islands were smacked. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, we pretty much just have a little bit of flooding in some of the harbors around St. Croix. But the British Virgin Islands most likely waiting to hear their assessment damages as well. Warnings now for the Turks and Caicos, where we're looking at an 8 meter storm surge. That's much higher than maybe the 2.5 to 3 they're going to have in Puerto Rico because they're in the dangerous quadrant. They're in that northeastern quadrant. Here is the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and there has been a shift between last night when they put out a model and then this morning's track. It shifted a little bit eastward. So again, we're watching what the trend is sliding more toward Miami after it messes with northern Cuba, if it even does. The track difference now, we're not seeing much interaction with Cuba. So even though the center is staying off Puerto Rico, and most likely, yes, it will, for Dominican Republic and Haiti and into Cuba, the stronger winds are offshore. They're still going to get heavy rain. I mean, there's mountainous terrain. But because it's going to be over water, not interacting with land, it sustains its strength as a catastrophic hurricane category 4. Then it makes its way toward Miami. That's right. Or just hugs the coast all the way up northward. If it stays a little eastward over the waters, it sustains a category 4, maybe category 5 strength, and plows into the Carolinas. Now, the computer models, we're still watching them, all in very good agreement. Some of these models want to interact with Cuba. That would devastate central areas and to the east. But then the lift takes its place and moves northward. We still believe the timing is Saturday afternoon at some point. Notice we have one model that slides well east and away from the U.S. That would be a blessing. Although that's considered an outlier, and you have to disregard it. You look for the trend, and you look for what is really its commonality between these models. And it takes it right over Miami, possibly back out over water before plowing into Savannah, Georgia. So again, when we watch this, it's just really amazing. Now, the timing for the tropical storm force winds will start to make their way in toward Cuba on Friday. So that's when everybody has to get ready Thursday, the day before, or now. Into Miami and to Florida, you're talking maybe late Saturday and Sunday, but the landfall may not be until late Sunday or into Monday. And get this, Zane, Jose is a hurricane now. That could become a major hurricane and come very close to those islands in the northern Antilles again, then slide north. Katia developed this morning as a tropical storm, and it also is a hurricane. We have 3. Katia is going to slide down toward the government of Mexico. The last time we had 3 was in 2010. The names were Carl, Julia, and Igor. This is getting out of hand.
Crazy.
Katia, Jose, certainly the last thing that area, that region needs right now. All right, Tom Sater, Live for us there. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And for the very latest on the impact Hurricane Irma is having across the Caribbean, we want to turn now to Ronald Jackson on the